Oh, hey, Dark Obsidian followers. Raven Ritual 666 coming back with another update for Hiroshimoze. So today what we're going to look at is just some of the updated gear that we're actually using for this build, as well as why we're using some of these changes, what works the best, and a quick touch point back on some of our skill points. So let's get into it. As you can see, camera's up and running, baby, so here I am. Look, so my build video for the overall skill points, the reasons why is still out on YouTube. Hiroshimoze Mayhem 10, level 60. However, some of the gear has changed. We've actually found better options. Through some of the testing, we have found specific anointments work better in one form or the other. So the best 4 weapons to use with this build, firstly is the beacon, next would be the flipper, then we have the Sandhawk, and then the Backburner. I think this is all gear and all weapons that everyone in the community knows are top tier in the game. However, we've had some adjustments to our shield. We've actually farmed a much better version of the old god. It returns 7,000 damage if meleeed while shielded, which is nice. But I think the most important part is that we're using the action skill end to gain that extra 50% radiation damage, which is what the whole build is still centered around. So Hiroshimoze, look, I know it's the 75th anniversary of such an awful event, and part of that history that hopefully we will forever learn from. But the reason why we do call this build Hiroshimoze, I mean, it's a play on words, but it's the fact that Hammer Down Protocol, Moze drops those 2 nukes that just does a massive amount of damage. So what we are using is the Bloodletter class mod, as well as the Deathless artifact. Now, the prefix on the artifact doesn't matter so much. It's more about just getting that Deathless, so your health is really low, so we can utilize anointments such as URAD, so while under 50% health, deal 150% bonus radiation damage. That is one of our key anointments that this build is also centered around. I find it works great with the Sandhawk. It's also wonderful with the Yellow Cake. I'm using a action skill and 200% splash damage increase on my Backburner. I'm using a 160% increased splash damage for my flipper. However, 200% would be even better because it procs with short fuse. The other anointment that would still be great with the flipper is the URAD anointment as well. So I do have a beacon that we use the radiation version of with the 160% increased splash damage. And I also do have a beacon that I do sometimes swap out to with the URAD. It just depends. If I feel like using Iron Bear more, I will use the splash damage beacon. If I just want to run through, mow down enemies without jumping in and out of Iron Bear, I will just use the URAD anointment. So it's really up to you guys. These 4 weapons here definitely are the best. We're still using a cloning maddening tracker. This one does have the anointment while taking damage has a 20% chance to spawn a grade. That's nice to have. But definitely the best option would be bonus incendiary damage on action skill end. So we could be using radiation and incendiary. If you have a radiation, I'll go with incendiary. I'll go vice versa there. It's just that we're also getting an increase on our incendiary damage due to some of our skills, which I'll touch base on in a sec. So I think what we overall want is the majority of our artifact and our shield to be increasing that radiation damage, because Moze doesn't have any skills to proc that herself. That's also going to work with Hammer Down Protocol when we're dropping those 2 nukes to help increase that damage. The most important stat roll you can get on a class mod is splash damage. Now this works from your guns, and it also works with your Iron Bear as well. Now Hammer Down Protocol doesn't benefit from crits, so crit damage is irrelevant for this exact build. But you want to get splash damage. Heavy weapon damage is really your go-to weapons still to try and go through true takedown. So I really recommend having that. However, when it comes to my Bloodletter class mod, I do have a few other versions. One with splash and SMG damage, one with splash overall weapon damage. So I've found through my testing that I like 2 points in Desperate Measures and 2 points in Phalanx Doctrine. That's also the reason why I went back to the Bloodletter Deathless build. Now these two skills really do give you a lot more extra weapon damage, which is just nice to have. However, to go down the Shield of Retribution tree, you're wasting a lot of skill points across here that's not going to help our damage. Now, the majority of Moze's damage comes from Demolition Woman. Short Fuse is the best capstone. I won't really go into that too much. Stainless Steel Bear, a lot of people know it still procs with Short Fuse, so really important skill to pick up. Fire and a Scan Dead means we're getting bonus incendiary damage with all the radiation weapons that we're using. So we're also proccing that fire with that radiation. So we're getting great dots on our enemies. Talk Cross Promotion increases our splash damage. Auto Bear is important because we want to get in Iron Bear, do some damage with those nukes, jump back out and proc some of their action skill ends like splash damage or bonus incendiary or radiation or whatever you guys can get through your farming. Vampire for our health regen, or with the Bloodletter how it turns back into our shields. To the last is not important. You do not need to pick the skill up. I just like having it there. On the odd occasion where I've cleaned down a whole mob, I might have died from enemies' dots, and I can throw a grenade out. It'll clean out that one last ad that might be sitting out there behind a barrier or behind a fence. So really nice to have. This is what the build was centered around. Using the Vanquisher rocket pod, but using both arms with Hammer Down Protocol. So to get the most damage out of Hammer Down Protocol, what we need to be using and working our way through this build is to get to Specialist Bear. So Specialist Bear means we get a plus 60% damage for equipping two weapons that are the same. So that, in mind, was a key skill to be going down on this tree. Of course, we get a lot of damage out of skills like Cloud of Lead, Stoke the Embers to help buff extra incendiary damage, which is nice to have. Redistribution is great for our ammo regen and for our health, so wonderful. Scrappy is a brilliant skill, especially while we're moving. We do get weapon damage, handling, weapon swap and mode swap speed, which is really great to have. Works great with the Chaosin too, when we link that with Russian Offensive. Now, you don't need to pick up Russian Offensive, but I highly recommend it. There might be certain points throughout the game where you're getting through into these mobs where your grenades are not going to quite give you enough health regen. Also, 3 points generally in Mayhem 10 is enough health regen or shield regen. I just like to have the point in Russian Offensive. To run and shoot is handy in certain circumstances. It is a little bit awkward. I know the button's not quite right. If you're reloading and you hit sprint, it won't work. So you have to actually sprint before you hit reload. So it is a little bit awkward. But when you're using a gun with a delayed effect, like a Chaosin, you can shoot at an enemy, run off in the other direction, and by the time those secondary explosions go off, your shield will be fully charged. So it can save you in a lot of circumstances. If you don't want Russian Offensive, I would probably put the point in as Scorching RPMs. The Iron Bear damage is increased by an extra 5%, which will give you quite a few thousand extra damage on our Hammer Down Protocol, so it's really nice to have. Depends what you want. If you're doing okay with your survivability, chuck it in there. If not, feel free to use Russian Offensive or put it wherever you like if you want more magazine size through Iron Bank or using Match Set. So we do go 3 points into click-click. Now, I've had a lot of discrepancy and conversations around why are we going click-click instead of using Drowning in Brass. Now, Drowning in Brass is an amazing skill, and I would love to have more points in there. However, this build I'm using Hammer Down Protocol, and I really needed to get Specialist Bear. I wanted the extra health regen of Russian Offensive, especially for true takedown mode. So it meant I didn't have that option to get more points into there. I could drop click, drop a few more points around here to get to Drowning in Brass. However, I do lose the damage with Iron Bear, as we are doing a Deathless and Bloodletter build, rather than using a Rocketeer, or rather than using a Minesweeper and a different Hawkman. Now this is what this build's around, and this is why it's unique. 1 point still here gives us up to 12% once we're mobbing. So you can still get an extra 12% gun damage. Mind you, it only lasts for 15 seconds per stack, but during mobs you can keep this up consistently. Click, we are going to be going through our magazine a little bit. So that's why we don't need to pick up some for the road. It would be a lovely skill to have to keep infinite ammo for 5 seconds, especially if you're low on that mag size. However, the returns are quite good. Once you're a few shots out from your magazine, you are already starting to see that increase in gun damage. Using things like the Chaosin or even the Flipper, when you get right down the end of that mag, you can still kind of keep it there through throwing grenades. with our skills such as pull the holy pin, getting crits, and redistribution, which is also helping our health and ammo regen. So we pick up 3 points in the thin red line. Now you don't need the extra skill point in there from your class mod, but I like it. I wanted to build that balances between doing damage consistently and that survivability, where you don't need to be so focused on health tanking, or that 1% of that time when you're caught reloading you will go down. And also 5 points in armored infantry. It's great. Gun damage, damage reduction, very nice to have. So the 2 points of desperate measure means that at all times using our deathless, we are getting an extra 33% gun damage, which is just awesome. And Phalanx Doctrine, we can end up getting 3 stacks of that quite easily from a few kills to getting 12% more gun damage for the next 30 seconds. The best part is there's no stack limit. You wipe out a mob with a rocket launcher of get 10 kills, you're stacking it up. So you really can increase your shields to way over 100,000%, giving you more survivability and more chance, but also that damage as well. So I do love Phalanx Doctrine. A lot of other builds I know can't quite utilize it, or there's other reasons why when you're using a Blastmaster class mod, you're proccing the splash damage, or you're focusing more on the Iron Bear. This is that build that just gives you a great balance between damage and survivability. So just other gear and other weapons that do work really quite well. I'll talk around the shields. The Old Gods, most people want to do damage. If you're doing true takedown through the Guardian, or even melee one takedown, you are going to be taking more shock damage. I recommend having a transformer. I prefer one in just at least corrosive, radiation, and incendiary. I mainly use the radiation. However, if I get to Wotan or Anathema, I will chuck on the corrosive transformer just to get that little bit of corrosive damage on top of the radiation gear. When it comes to bossing, I always swap out to a one-shotter shield, and I actually swap out my artifact, and it's just purely based on the stat rolls. So I have an elemental projector splatter gun with plus 31% grenade damage, 20% radiation damage, area of effect damage. So the 2 key stat rolls that you can get with this build, one is area of effect damage because it procs with the splash damage on our class mod, which increases the damage of Hammer Down Protocol. That also transitions to the splash damage that you're getting from your weapons, so really great across the Beacon, Flipper, Sandhawk, Backburner, Unkempt Herald, Chaosin, Boomsicle, Plague Bearer, Yellow Cake. These gears is probably what works the best. Also, I do have a couple other artifacts I swap to. You always want to have a Snowdrift Deathless. Moze can be a bit slow. Really handy to sometimes pick up that bit of extra speed if you're not using Speed Demon. I generally use More Than OK Boomer as a Mayhem roll just because I prefer that, but Speed Demon's a great option. Buddy System's probably your best very hard. We're doing so much splash damage. Hammer Down Protocol and Auto Bear will just fire and actually take down so many of those buddy systems that allows you to focus just on those enemies. So it's really good to have. If I could farm probably the perfect artifact, I'd like to have an Atom Balm Deathless. I do have one, but the prefix does not outweigh the benefits of the stat rolls below. So the Atom Balm Deathless would help us increase our radiation damage aura, the radius, and the damage as well, which would be really great to have proccing with an Old God shield. I'd also then want to have area effect damage, radiation damage. Your third one can be quite up to you, whether you want SMG damage because you prefer using that weapon. If you had heavy weapon damage, which would translate to shotgun damage because it's how it weirdly works, but I won't go into that. I like action skill cooldown rate, especially in those hairy situations. You can jump in into Iron Bear, allow your shields to come back up, maybe pick off an enemy before getting out, so it can save you a lot from having a little bit more cooldown rate. Magazine size is also awesome to have, so it's based on your personal preference. The 2 key things to have there is radiation damage and area of effect damage. Going across into some of the other gear that works quite well, the Light Show is also quite a strong pistol. It does proc short fuse quite a lot, which is great to have. So I don't have the ideal Light Show, but radiation with bonus radiation still works very effectively, especially for mobbing. The Unkempt Herald is absolutely fantastic. Now, I do prefer the Beacon over the Unkempt Herald, especially the the fire rate, the splash damage, and the radiation damage I'm getting off the top of it. It is my favourite pistol, but I do sometimes swap out to just to change up the playstyle to an Unkempt Harold with either U-Rad Anointment or my 200 splash. I'd also like to get a radiation Unkempt Harold with both these anointments as well, but I've literally farmed 2 times and got these on the first 2 rolls, so I think out of everything I've ever done chasing this build, it was luck of the grind. Pray to the RNG, for Odin shall provide. Next we've got Mikaosin. I'd love a radiation ×2 variant with U-Rad Anointment or the splash damage anointment. Both will work across with this build. I do have a flipper with radiation and cryo and bonus rad. A boomsicle that is nowhere near as good as what it could be for this build, so I'm still chasing a nuclear boomsicle with either splash damage or the U-Rad anointment. Nuclear Monarch's okay. It's definitely not the best gun for this build because we don't really get the splash damage off of it as much, and we punch through the magazine size so quick, so you don't quite get the benefit of using click right down at that back end of the mag size. But if you are going to use a Monarch, I recommend a ×4, so you can try and keep more damage up with your anointments for the next 2 mags at lower end. Otherwise, OPQ system still works great. I know it's level 57, it'll be phased out, but I still like to keep one there. Rad Anarchy is fantastic as well. This is not even the best one, but it works quite well. You'd want a ×18 or ×20 pellet variant. The best would probably be a U-Rad, under 50% health, still 150% radiation damage. Otherwise, splash damage as well. I've got a lob with Auto Bear. Auto Bear, 130% bonus incendiary damage works quite well as well. However, splash damage or U-Rad would probably be preferable. The Potent Nukem, I've got every different variant, and I like the 390 the most. It's great to have one with the 3 magazine size, as you can just get a little bit more DPS out spending less time reloading. The 309 is great for some mobs. I mean, the huge radius of it, if you can proc an action skill end and get the bonus radiation damage off it as well, you can pick off some enemies too easily. I do have this backburner there that I was using just to kill Anathema, just in certain circumstances. However, the radiation backburner will kill bosses without the need of even using corrosive gear. I love the yellow cake for co-op play. I think it's just so important that you don't use a backburner and you take out your playing partner. So the yellow cake does protect him a little bit more from that you can just go to town with splash. Plague Bear is great. You probably want a splash damage anointment, the 200% or even the 160 for 18 seconds. Krakatoa works alright. I like it just for individual enemies, just to change up the gear that I'm using. Oh god, we want Transformers, Bloodletters, and pretty much that's the updated build guide. So I want to say a massive thank you to the community. I think I've had some wonderful support as of recent. Look, there's no doubt I'm an absolute noob. I mean, I'm new to this, I'm new to the community, but I just love Borderlands, and I just want to share, my creation, what I can do. I will get into a little bit of gameplay just to show you guys through what it is like. I've never attempted true takedown mode for the Guardian takedown before, so I'm just going to put this build to the absolute test and give it a red hot crack. Alright, so for the true takedown Guardian takedown, I will start with the old god, especially for the beginning. I will keep my splash and heavy weapon on. I will keep my last stand deathless because I'll be using more heavy weapons than I will be other gear. So I will have a back burner as well as a yellow cake, just so I can switch between rocket launchers quite quickly and effectively. Otherwise, the cloning maddening track is going to be where a lot of our health comes from. So let's rock into it. I'm just going to change the order of my rocket launchers just due to my OCD. When you've got gear that goes in a certain slot, you know how many button taps that you are away from getting there, and it might be that difference between putting a back burner in your face or getting a yellow cake off to the side. Alright, let's do this, chat. Off to hell I go. I think the goal is if I can get through the crystals and make my way through, I'll be pretty stoked with that for a performance. I'm going to go straight to backburner to start with. When I play, I generally jump in Iron Bear, I drop 2 nukes straight away and get straight out, so I get some refunded cooldown. You definitely want to keep away from the backburner. That flying enemy just made me backburn myself in the face, which was quite unfortunate. So the area of effect damage and the splash damage radius that we do get off torque cross promotion can make it quite deadly. So we'll jump back into Iron Bear. Once we fire these rockets, we'll jump back out. It means Auto Bear can keep that DPS up for us while we're also being able to utilise the backburner. You want to throw grenades quite frequently as well, just in case you take some massive damage like that. The backburner is putting myself in a bit of jeopardy, so look, I will go to Yellow Cake. We can fire a lot of pellets. So I'll jump back into my Iron, show you how strong still the beacon is against these mobs. So what's also great about the beacon, you do get a lovely bit of splash damage with the burst when you reload. It does, I think from testing on the Handsome Jack dummy in Sanctuary, about 100k damage. Now I know that doesn't get Mayhem Scaling in Sanctuary, so I think Mayhem Scaling would be, off the top of my head, you know, about 30 times more, but don't correct me on that. If you want to know any facts, figures, go see Thick Fillet, Lazy Data, Moxie. A lot of these guys in the community know the ins and outs, so massive shout out to everyone that paves the way and supports everyone else. So pretty much, I do like to use a Sandhawk to sometimes pick off these guys here. Jump back into Iron Bear. See if I can make it. Nice. So sometimes I like to just hang about in Iron Bear, just for the fun of it, because I mean, trying to chase them down with those nukes makes my day. And that's why, you know, it feels like radiation warfare. So Hiroshimoze, that's where the name comes from.